All right, everybody. So welcome to episode 4 of Buying a Home. This week, we're talking about you're under contract. Now we're opening escrow, and we're going to talk about what that means from a broker standpoint and also from a lending standpoint. So let's go into it. So earnest money, guys. Most purchase agreements include earnest money. So what is earnest money? Normally, it's a deposit. I guess the best way I can describe it, it's a deposit. And there is actually a definition of earnest money that we can share with you. But I'm going to tell you what my opinion of it is. It's a deposit that says, I will be purchasing this property. This is my money, my deposit in earnest, stating that you will close escrow on it. Now, that earnest money deposit, normally in our market, in Albuquerque's market, it's 1% of the total sales price. So if the house is, $300,000, that's going to be $3,000. It's going to be $3,000. But the truth is, it's totally negotiable. Can you have a purchase agreement with no earnest money?
Absolutely. It happens quite a bit.
So it's not something that's a must, but it is pretty customary. Okay.
Basically, it's pretty much the lender considers a promise to buy the home and keep it into pending status, and it's to the point where nobody can look at the property any longer.
So, a quick question about earnest money.
Yeah.
Does earnest money, is it applied to the purchase? Is it a fee? Does the buyer get it back? How does that work?
So earnest money is credited towards your cash to close, pretty much. So if you have, let's say, a $2,000 earnest money deposit, we would want to source where the funds came from. In the event that we cannot source those funds, you'll just get that money back at the closing table.
So, but that, if somebody's putting down, $20,000 and their earnest money is $3,000, their down payment's basically going to be $17,000, correct? All right. So just quick little math. I'd use real simple numbers just because I'm a simple guy. All right. So let's talk about where that money goes. Does it go to the seller? No, it actually goes to the title company, the escrow company, okay? And we could talk about some of the difference there. What's the difference between a title company and an escrow company, all right? So let's talk about that. There's a difference between a title company and an escrow company. Can they be one and the same? The answer is absolutely yes. But an escrow company is the company that prepares all the documents, orders the survey, closes you, and we can talk more about that later. The title company is a totally separate place. It's actually a thing. And it actually orders the title to make sure there's not any liens or judgments or any encumbrances on the property. So the earnest money is going to go to an escrow company, and that's where you open up escrow. From that point in time, the title company is doing a title search. So this is the first week, guys. What are their instructions? Let's talk about what is an executed purchase agreement. So we talked about in episode 3 about now you're under contract. Under contract means there is an executed purchase agreement. And the executed purchase agreement serves as instructions for your lender. Mm-hmm. What does it tell you?
It tells us exactly the terms and conditions of the property that you're purchasing, the purchase price, the closing date, the title company that's being used, the realtors that are involved, any relationships between each and every person in the transaction, and it gives us all the details we need to board the loan.
So the executed purchase agreement are the instructions for the actual transaction. All right. So who gets a copy of that executed purchase agreement? The title company does, the escrow company and title company. Sometimes they're one and the same. They get those as instructions to know when the closing date is, when the appraisal has to be done by, when a survey has to be done by. Maybe you purchased a home that's in what we call an HOA, so a homeowners association.
Exactly.
So they're going to have to order those docs. These are instructions for everybody to help make sure that your transaction goes as smooth as possible. Do you see why a lot of people shouldn't do for sale by owner and stuff like that? There's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah.
So the executed purchase agreement are the instructions. It also tells
the lender who's paying for what, which is going to be super important for the transaction. And that's going to decide who pays for the inspections, who pays for the home warranty, who pays for the title work, who's paying for the lender fees, the points, the surveys. All that's going to be explained on the executed purchase agreement. And when we say executed, basically what that means, it's been signed by both the seller and the buyer.
Correct.
And when it's fully executed, that gives us the green light to go ahead and work on the file for the buyer.
All right. So now you guys know what a fully executed purchase agreement is. And that'll go to the appraiser. The appraiser wants to see a copy of the fully executed purchase agreement, right? Because they need to know terms. A lot of people get access to this the fully executed purchase agreement. All right, guys. So now you're in the first week. Then the title company starts doing title searches. Exactly. What are they looking for, Amar?
So they look for any liens that have been on the property itself. If there's a lot of work that's been done to the property in recent months, There can be contractors that say, you know what, I've done some work to this property and the owner hasn't paid me for the work. Or if there's a encumbrance on the property itself, they'll search for that as well. Anything that has to do with the property just to keep the buyer safe is going to be searched for by the title company.
They're also looking at you, the buyer. So also going to look at your social, they're going to pull your social security number, and they're going to want to know, do you have any liens or judgments that need to be paid prior to closing on this? Because a lot of these things, that's what judgments and liens are for, to ensure that people pay. So that's the title company is going to go and pull all these, a search on you to make sure that there's nothing that's going to hinder you from purchasing this property as well. Now, all this happens, and again, it's on the executed purchase agreement, but it should, normally the way we write it up is we should be getting title commitments within 48 hours of receiving an executed purchase agreement or opening escrow. All right, so that's kind of how that works. And also what happens, so we've opened up escrow. Once you deposit your earnest money, escrow is open. Now the title company is going through and doing all these types of items. They're looking for these things. What are you looking for in the first week? Now, guys, remember the plane's about to, the plane's about to take off here.
We hit the gas.
All right.
Yeah.
So now we're doing this the first week, earnest money, titles being ordered.
So this, yeah.
You have an executed, now me as the buyer's broker, I've sent you an executed purchase agreement. What does week one look like for you?
So week one has to do with a lot of paperwork. And the most important thing is getting the disclosure package prepared for the buyer. And what that entails is the disclosure package must have all the terms and conditions of the loan that you're presenting to the buyer. Basically, it's going to have the loan program that's going to work best for the buyer. It's going to have the interest rate that's proposed to the buyer. It's going to have all the lender fees, the proposed title fees, which initially are a little overestimated. It's going to show closing costs on who pays for what. It's going to have, it's probably a 30 to 50 page packet that's going to explain everything that entails with this loan and what the buyer is signing. And a lot of buyers are reading gibberish when they see these things. So a lot of times we do it over the phone or in person, or they conference call me when we're going over the disclosures. And a lot of people like to bring them in and meet in person, which is perfectly fine.
All right. So how does life get easier? Now we're going to go back to episode 1. So I'm hoping everybody's following track. This is where getting pre-approved versus pre-qualified saves people a lot of time.
Plenty of time. It's gonna be to this step now is when we collect the borrower's personal documentation as well, if they haven't already submitted it. So if you were pre-approved, then you're like, hey, I already submitted all my docs beforehand, so I'm way ahead of the game. I'm gonna skip this whole step right here and just update my documentation. All
right, so that's kind of your arena and the, getting updated documents, everything like that. Now on my side, on the broker side of things, what we're doing is we're making sure that we're ordering inspections, guys. So we're ordering all the inspections that should be done for the purchase of your property. So that's what my staff is doing week 1.
Absolutely, yep.
Is we're making sure the title company has an executed agreement, and also making sure that we're ordering all the pertinent inspections for the property that you're purchasing, and making sure that those are lining up with your schedule too, because we actually want you as a purchaser to be present for inspections. So that leads us into next week. So you're going to join us next week. Is there anything else that people need to know about week 1?
And the only thing I wanted to say is a loan does not require inspections unless it's specified on the purchase agreement. A lot of people mix up inspections and appraisals as well.
He's getting into week 5.
And I'm already getting ahead of myself, but inspections are ordered by the real estate company that's going to cover you on your behalf, the buyer's agents, and the appraisal's ordered by the lender, which is going to be us. But we'll talk about that on episode 5 when you join us next week.
All right, guys. So recapping, episode 4 of buying your home, opening escrow. We talked about earnest money. We talked about how that works. Earnest money also, and I will talk about what earnest money does later on. And actually we talked about that early on. But earnest money, your deposit saying that you're going to purchase. Where that goes, we talked about that. We talked about the title company and what that does. What's the difference between an escrow company and a title company and what their functions are. We also talked about an executed purchase agreement, what the definition of an executed purchase agreement is, and how it's the instructions for your transaction. Okay, Absolutely. We talked about that. We talked about what the lender's going to need in week 1. They're going to need that executed purchase agreement. We talked about what the broker is going to be doing in week 1 of your purchase, which is making sure escrow is open, making sure the title company has your earnest money deposit and a fully executed purchase agreement, and also leading into next week, which is now we've ordered inspections. So join us for episode 5 of Purchasing Your Home. Next week, we're going to be talking about inspections and that process and how it works. We're going to walk you through all that because nobody should ever buy a house without inspections or doing their due diligence. All right. So we're going to talk about that next week. So join us next week for episode 5 of Purchasing Your Home.
Thank you, guys.